Welcome to Dove and Dragon Radio. I'm your host, M.L.Ruscsak. I'm here with author E.J. Frost. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, you have a lot of books on the internet right now. So which was your first and which is your current?
The very first was called Snowburn, and that came out in 2014. And the most recent release is called Blood Yellow, and that just came out at the end of December.
Okay. So you've been writing since 2014. What led you into writing?
I've actually been writing since I was 17. And I don't really want to say how long ago that was, but more than 30 years. And I published initially a very short story called The Nature of Love in a local magazine. And I'm really glad that the internet did not exist then, because I don't want to have any copies of that floating around anymore. But that gave me a taste for what it's like, not just to write stories for other people, but to publish them. And it was a very positive experience. I really enjoyed it. I loved getting feedback from readers on what they liked and didn't like about the story. And that definitely pushed me towards professional writing for the next many, many years. And then when Amazon began opening up ebooks, that gave me an avenue to publish myself. I had looked at getting an agent and had spoken to an agent and secured an agent for the first book in the Blood Yellow series called Neon Blue. But I'd had so many author friends of mine have really negative experiences with traditional publishing that I decided to try this fun new thing, independent publishing on my own, and it really worked well for me. And so I've stuck with it ever since.
Well, there's good things and bad things about publishing. And, it's going to depend on the author. It's going to depend on who you have as your agent and who you have as your publisher.
Absolutely.
It's not one size fits all. Indie publishing is great. I published my first book indie publishing and then went over to traditional. Now, I have authors under me that I now publish for because that's my path. But for you have so many books out and they're great. I see there's many internet reviews, which is wonderful. So what is it about your series that is captivating people?
I think that they connect with the characters that I write. I like to write marginalized characters who aren't quite in the mainstream. And I think it's easy, particularly now, with the times being so difficult for so many people. I think it's easy to connect with those characters and sort of see that yourself in them, find maybe a little bit of hope in them and their situations and how they resolve their problems, and also some escapism. I mean, primarily what I'm writing is what's called speculative fiction or very fantastic fiction. These are not usually realistic scenarios. My witches and my demons roaming around are not everyday occurrences. And I think it allows people to get away from their problems as well. So I think that's what
all love our witches and our demons and our dragons and our all the wonderful mystical stuff. So obviously you have a ear note there with someone speaking in your ear a little bit.
It's always what I've been interested in. The first book I can remember reading for my own very well was Dune by Frank Herbert. I picked up my father's very battered copy of Dune and began reading it. And that really, I found an incredibly transportive experience. Just the idea of being on a very different planet with incredibly different customs and a different ecology really stimulated my imagination. And I've always wanted that as a reading experience ever since.
Well, that's a wonderful reading experience. I mean, we have our readers that read for academic. We have our readers that read for, we need to have knowledge or self-help or self-awareness or whatever, which is fine. But then we have our readers that want that fantasy, that want to escape this reality, especially since 2020 till now.
Really been a couple of very difficult years.
Yes. But, we have to escape this reality. And as much as 2020 has given us enough information to write more fiction, we need to escape it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I see it in my own reading as
Mhm.
well. I read at least 100 and often 250 books a year. And I absolutely want that separation, that escape. Prior to COVID, I was reading a lot more fact-based books, biographies, and you know, um, thrillers, but they were very based in fact.
Mhm.
And I've just stopped doing that since COVID. I don't need any of that intruding on my
Oh,
life
I
right
know.
now.
I used to do a lot of historical fiction and, based on the facts, but the characters may not be 100% accurate. So they call it fiction, or, doing the self-help. And I'm like, no, I need to get back to my fantasy. I'm so over.
Give me fairies and demons right now. I really can't cope with anything else.
Exactly. I mean, that's what we need. We can't cope with reality. So we turn to our fictional authors to give us a nice, juicy fairy or demon or, something going on in make believe land.
Yeah. I also think there's an element of empowerment there.
Mhm.
The last couple of years have been tremendously disempowering. We don't know what's happening. We don't know if we'll ever get back to any kind of new normal and what it will look like.
Mhm.
We're powerless in the face of this illness. And a lot of these fantasy stories are about someone finding their power, finding their strength. And I think that's really compelling right now. I absolutely love reading those kind of stories, particularly about women. If there's a feisty female heroine who's out there and she's finding her power and she's claiming her agency, boy, I love reading that right now. It's really great.
Those are the best books right now. I mean, not just for female readers, but for readers in general. Because when you empower a woman who's feisty as all hell, you're empowering everyone else. And
Everyone around her, everyone else gets a lift. And that's what I really like to see. I like seeing her come into her own, but also I like seeing sort of the ripple effect out into the characters around her as they all get lifted up with her, which is great. It's a lot of fun to read.
So what's next in your series?
I have a series called Teddy's Boys, The Bad Boys of Bevington College. And the next book that's coming out at the beginning of March is going to be the second book in that series called Gabe's Girl.
Mm-hmm.
And it is releasing on Vella right now. And so it's episode by episode on Vella. And then the ebook's going to come out at the beginning of March.
Well, what is that one a little bit about?
That one is a reverse harem. So the heroine has multiple love interests and does not have to choose between them. She gets her whole harem of boys who are devoted to her, but also devoted to each other. And that's one of the things I've liked the most about writing that, the relationships between the boys as they really begin to learn how to go beyond friendship and develop into a family. And that's been really heartening to write right now when so many families are divided and distanced. I've felt that to be a really powerful thing to write and to read. And absolutely, I write the stories I want to read. Mm-hmm. I read my own books, for comfort, particularly right now. And I absolutely am writing the stories that are very close to my heart and the ones that I turn to when I have bad days. So that story is about a young woman from Manchester, England. I'm obviously an American, but I live in Manchester, just north of Manchester. And I have a daughter who's just sort of finished her teenage years. And that book is a little bit of an homage to her and her friends. They've come through some really difficult times. I think it's tough to be a teenager right now. They've had tremendous disruption.
Mm-hmm. My daughter just graduated high school back last summer. So we had 2 years of homeschool from COVID. And then we had 2 years of homeschool before that because I was homeschooling because I didn't like the school system.
Absolutely.
So, she had the homeschool experience and then she got to go back to high school and she was loving high school. She loved being in school. And then she
lost it all. Yeah. That was absolutely the experience of the kids here as well.
It's heartening to see that because the kids need to be interacting. It's so hard to be a teenager right now
Yep.
You have what's going on with the world with COVID. Then you go to the online bullying. Then you go to the peer pressure that you get from your peers that you are connected with in the community. It's so hard to be a teen right now.
It is. And they are graduating
Mhm.
into a school of life that I think is even more uncertain and worrisome than it was certainly when I was leaving high school and going to college. I didn't have the worries about climate change. I wasn't, deeply concerned about getting a job. We were coming out of the Reagan years when I was coming out of high school, and it looked pretty bright on the job front. Whereas, my daughter and her friends, they've got no idea if there'll be any jobs for them, particularly as COVID continues to grind on and the economy continues to suffer. So I think they're coming out of high school and going into an even more uncertain world than we did. Than I did.
Well, we both did. I mean, back in the 2000s, you can go out to get, it might not be a job at Ford or GMC or, something like that. Right. You could still go and get your entry-level jobs at your restaurants and stuff like this. Well, now you see the restaurants closing, not because of the COVID, but because they can't be people to work.
There are all kinds of pressures on the entertainment industry. I mean, America didn't go through quite the series of lockdowns that England did, but the lockdowns really damaged our hospitality industry hugely. And so the jobs that kids could get going out of high school are, there are many fewer of them than there were. And they're uncertain. Every time a big department store goes under, a lot of 18 and 19 and 20-year-olds lose their jobs. So it's been really tough for them. And Teddy's Boys and Gabe's Girl are really my tribute to the kids who are coming out and trying to find their way in this not very brave new world.
Yeah, where we're at now is going to be completely different in 10 years.
I agree.
Now, where we're at in 10 years is it's up in the air. It's going to depend, A, what country you're in, and B, and what mentality we're in.
Absolutely.
So we need the books now to empower, to escape, so we can figure out how to shape our world for 10 years.
Yeah. And what coping mechanisms you need going forward, can you face reality on a daily basis, or do you need to retreat? My daughter and I talk a lot about sanity days. Are you working 7 days a week, or are you working 6 days and then taking a day as a sanity day? And that day may not be a Saturday or Sunday. It might be a Wednesday. It might be a Monday. What day do you need to retreat from the world, and how often do you need to do it, and who do you need to do it with? Do you really need to be alone during that time, or is it better, given the tremendous loneliness that she experienced, in particular the last 18 months? Does she want to be with somebody to do it? And those are hard questions, and they're things that we revisit frequently, but that's definitely what I was thinking about when I was writing both Teddy's Boys and Gabe Girl.
Well, those are things that we do need to think about. I mean, we have these days and we go, me personally, I want to be alone because I'm surrounded by family 7 days a week. And I need to have alone time. So I'll go find a nice little area in the park, in nature, and be completely alone. But my daughter, on the other hand, she needs to be with people. That's her sanity.
Yeah. And she's probably been deprived that for quite a long time during whatever, sort of lockdown experience you had, or closure of the schools that you had. They didn't, my daughter was literally locked down for a year. And she lost her entire first year, her freshman year at university, when she would have been making friends and going to the clubs and, having that freshman year at university experience, which she's completely lost. And I think that has made her both more aware of her social situation and more desirous of that social contact. And I don't blame her for any of that. I just worry about her being exposed.
Yeah, my daughter, she stays away from people, that's her thing, but at the time she wants to be surrounded by people. So it's a constant at odds with herself, what she's
Yeah.
wanting. So I give her books. I'm like, here, have a book.
Have a book.
Escape
Enjoy the
reality
book.
for a little bit. And look,
Yeah.
the book mom didn't write.
Yeah. Here you go. I think that's really important right now. And I've talked to my daughter a lot about sort of the things that fill her free time.
Mhm.
And I think gaming was a big thing
Mhm.
during COVID. And I think it still is a big thing, but she's definitely moving away from that. And that may be a function of getting older. She's now 20, or it could just be a function of coming out of lockdown and feeling that you can connect more with other human beings. But I noticed that she's doing things like pub quizzes, and she's going and spending time with her boyfriend, and they read books together. And
Mhm.
that seems to be a sort of different functionality than they had during COVID, when they were really getting together just through their Xboxes and playing video games.
Yeah, it's a lot of different. I mean, we're moving in from me having my fiance just online to moving.
Ooh.
Yeah. Tried 2 years of just online because of COVID, no travel. But
That was so tough.
yeah. So you start getting now where you're together and it's a completely different mindset. But at the same time, you can go put yourself in this little fantasy mode and go, okay, how can I work this into a new book or new story to make it work for something else?
Yeah.
So minds of an author will find ways to make reality into fiction.
And make it somehow more digestible. I think our roles as authors is to filter the world through a lens that's both beautiful and tragic in some ways, and to make it more palatable to the reader, not in terms of dumbing it down or anything like that, but to make it handleable, to make it something that the reader can actually function with, instead of just looking around in despair and saying, yeah, I can't cope with any of this.
Yeah, it's, you don't want to have your reader going, no, I can't cope with reality, and I can't cope with your book because it's too reality.
No, it's not the idea.
No, so you don't want a depressive book. You want that empowering. You want that voice. You want to give them the power of themselves through your writing.
I really do. I always want my books to be hopeful, and although dark things may happen in them, I think ultimately the trend is upwards. The trend is towards hopefulness and towards empowerment, rather than feeling that there is only despair crushing in on us.
Now, with your other series, the Blood Yellow series, what is that one a little bit about?
That's the Demons series. The heroine is an urban witch named Zara, and she is of a Romani background. She has settled in the brick, as her Rom relations call it, and she's sort of trying to figure out how to deal with her power. She has a lot of power, but she is very afraid of it. It's done bad things in the past, and she doesn't quite know how to cope with it. And she doesn't really have any teaching figures, any authoritative figures around her to guide her at all. She bumps into an old friend while she's looking for an artifact for another friend, and this friend of hers, the old friend of hers, has unleashed a demon on the unsuspecting world, and the rest of the book is her trying to figure out how to keep the demon from getting her soul and putting the demon back in the box.
Okay, so we have I love my demon stories. So we have, yeah, we have to have the evil, the necessary evil of the book. And then you have to have your hero, heroine, or whatever your medium is, to get back the evil wherever it's supposed to be at. So this one literally is putting the evil back in the box.
She's trying very hard to stuff him back in the box. He doesn't really want to go back in the box. He definitely has his own agenda, and his agenda may eventually coincide with hers. But during Neon Blue in particular, their agendas are not on the same page at all, and she really needs to stuff him back in the box.
So are you writing another book after Neon Blue?
So Blood Yellow is the second book in that series, and that one's just came out at the end of December. And then there's a final book in the trilogy called Burning Bones, which I'm hoping to get out in 2023. I keep saying it's going to make it out in 2022, but I'm not really sure it will.
We have our goals as authors. You being an indie author, you don't have an actual time frame to write this book.
I don't. I've committed to a bunch of things in 2022. I have a number of anthologies that I'm writing for, and sort of shared worlds that I'm going into, and I don't want to let any of those down. So I need to work my own series around the deadlines for those books, and I don't want to feel like I'm letting any of my co-authors down.
Can you say what those titles of those books are?
I can say one of them, and that is called Curvy Space Girls Need Love Too. And it's going into a series called Large and in Charge that's going to come out on International Women's Day in March. And that one is about an AI who is guiding a spaceship to a colony, a planetary colony. And the form that she embodies is of a large, curvy, muscular woman. And I'm using sort of that to talk a little bit about my experience and the experiences of others as whatever you want to call it, plus size women in a society that I think discriminates pretty heavily against plus size women. So yeah, I wanted it to be a conscious choice by the AI to embody that form, and then also to sort of deal with the reactions of people around her to it.
That is an awesome medium to take on a social cause.
Yep.
And it doesn't need to be said that not all women are little twigs. You know, we come in all shapes and sizes.
All shapes and sizes.
So, I mean, one, you have to be happy with your own body.
And healthy. I think happiness and healthiness are very important.
Yes.
That said, though, bodies come in lots of different forms. And yes, I'd really like to see a larger embrasure of that rather than a more restrictive embrasure. And
we're starting to see on runway fashion shows where they're starting to embody the curvy women.
Yeah, I've been really encouraged by that. I still, I'm still a little discouraged by the fashion and the sizes in the stores and things like that, but I'm definitely pleased with the direction it's going. I think it's going the right way. What I want to divorce in a reader's mind is the connection between a lot of flesh, let's say, and unhealthiness, because those two things are not always related. You can be a certain size and still be incredibly healthy, and exercise and do all the, eat right and do all the good things for your body, and just still be a weight or a size that is not acceptable in the minds of many. So that's what I really wanted to hit on.
Well, I have relatives that are curvy women. They're very beautiful, curvy women.
Yep.
And they eat healthy. They're exercising. If you look at their medical records, they are more healthy than I am.
Yeah.
And then you have my other family members that look like little twigs walking around. It all depends on how healthy you actually have your body.
Yeah, that's right. And what your body is comfortable with. I remember reading an interview with an actress who was, she was in Battlestar Galactica, actually, and they'd asked her to gain muscle for her role. And she said that during the series, she was tremendously uncomfortable in her body while she was filming, because her body doesn't sit comfortably at that weight. She really wants to be about 20 pounds less. And so she felt out of sync with her body during the entire filming. And she said she felt her performance reflected that, how incredibly uncomfortable she was with the way her body moved and the shape she was during the filming. And I thought that was really interesting. Not just the pressure that she was put under to be a certain size and to be a certain look during the filming, which I think happens across genders. It has nothing to do with gender. I think that's a huge pressure that's put on men as well. but also that she feels comfortable at a certain weight. And I know that's true of me as well. I feel comfortable at a certain weight, and anything below that, and I feel weak, and anything above that, and I feel bloated. But I have a really sort of set weight where I'm very comfortable.
Most women, and this is a woman's mindset. I don't know if it's in men because I haven't heard this in men.
No.
But we have a weight that we know our bodies function at.
Yeah, where we're comfortable.
And if we're comfortable a certain weight, that's our comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
You can't make us gain 5 to 20 pounds because the doctor says, or you have to lose 5 to 20 pounds because the doctor says. It doesn't work that way. What are we as women comfortable with?
Yeah.
Is our heart healthy? Is our lungs healthy? Are we the rest of everything healthy? Then leave us alone. We're fine.
And also be really, attuned to our reproductive cycle.
Mm-hmm.
My whole body was very different pre-menopause to where I am now, which is perimenopausal. And it is just a big difference. It's a huge difference when your body is preparing every month to try to get pregnant. I naturally carried more weight. I was much more comfortable with, an extra 10 pounds because my body was getting ready to be pregnant again. Please don't stop. But that's just sort of the way I felt pre-menopause. And now that I'm sort of transitioning out of that fertile period, I can feel my body sort of pulling back on itself and saying, we don't need this anymore. We don't need to be getting ready to be pregnant. We're done.
Yeah. You can feel it in your body. And this is something that we as people need to say to our doctors because we know our body.
Those 10 minutes that you get with an NHS doctor in England a year.
It's about the same here. We might get 15.
It's grim. I went to see the nurse last year after a mammogram, my first mammogram. And she said, we haven't seen you in 2 or 3 years. And I said, well, I'm not sick, so I'd really rather not see you if you don't mind. I have other things to do with my day.
I did the same thing.
And she said, no, but we need to see you every year and make sure that you're okay and have a health check with you. I was like, all right, I'm fine. But and she said, well, it's great that you're in good health. And I said, yeah, I feel great. It's all good. And she took my usual things and she took some blood and she said, you're fine. You go off and do your thing. And we'll see you in a year for your pap smear and your next mammogram and, go do your thing. But I thought it was funny that she said, we haven't seen you in a couple of years. Well,
I did that to my doctor a few months ago because I was getting ready to travel again. And she's like, I haven't seen you since before COVID. I'm like, well, I haven't been sick, so I don't need to be here.
A, I haven't been sick, and B, I'm not sitting in a waiting room during COVID. You got to be kidding me. There are sick people there. No, thank you. Get me out. We had a situation during COVID where I cut myself badly and we were looking at going to the emergency room and I was like, no, get out the super glue and get out the little fly strip bandages and we'll bandage it up. But I am not going and sitting in an emergency room for 2 hours.
No,
nope.
If you have super glue can fix a lot of surface wounds.
It'll do.
Yep. But it was so good having you. So where can our listeners and our viewers find you?
You can find me exclusively on Amazon at present. I am going wide in 2022, but right now, all my books are on Amazon. And if you look under E.J. Frost on Amazon, you will find them all.
Thank you. And again, thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. It's lovely.
And for our viewers and our listeners, happy reading.